Hi, I'm Aaron Embry, Senior Engineering Director at NGH.
And I'm Katie Kleypas, Senior Account Manager for the Residential Sales Team. Today, we're talking with the team at Copeland. They'll be reviewing Copeland's involvement in the upcoming move to A2L refrigerants, changes they have made to their equipment, and their role in helping the industry navigate the A2L refrigerant change. You can ask a question by clicking the question button on the right of your screen. If you're in full screen mode, you'll need to hit escape to see it. It's great to have you here. The floor is yours.
Hi, I'm Brad Hess, Manager of AC Application Engineering with Copeland. I've been with Copeland Compressors for over 36 years, for the last 20 years spent in application engineering, helping our OEMs select and design Copeland compressors into their systems. Our team helps contractors and other industry users with the technical assistance and technical support for compressors. Most of our time has been spent on the A2L transition with all the new models being released into the industry. The main points of today's talk would be to discuss how we prepared for this refrigerant change and what the mechanical and performance similarities and differences are between the new compressors and the current compressors in the field. As a spoiler alert, there really aren't many differences. This is a big change for the industry, but we're doing our best to alleviate any of the concerns and the issues that contractors have with the change. The new compressors are really not that much different than what's out there today. So with a little education and research, all these new compressors and systems can be applied in a safe and reliable manner. We've been working with Nortec on providing customer samples for many years on the new refrigerants, then working with them on applying it to their systems and evaluating the performance and the reliability of those systems. Back in 2017, Copeland started construction on a 120,000 square foot R&D facility in Sydney, Ohio. This new lab has over 300 life test stands, 62 calorimeter or performance stands, 2 accredited psychrometric rooms, and over 130 mechanical technicians. They also work in other laboratories like the sound and vibration room, materials and systems chemistry, dedicated advanced assembly, and power electronics for variable speed compressors. And also in 2017, Copeland Product Engineering started the design process for these new A2L compressors. And since then, we've been working to release 640 new compressor models, over 50 unique compressor product families. We've also shipped over 8,000 compressor samples to our OEMs, and we're going to be producing these in 4 North American manufacturing plants. I want to reiterate that all of these new A2L models go through the same extensive reliability and performance testing that the A1 product platforms have gone through over the last 20 to 25 years. So now to move through into the mechanical differences of the R454B compressors versus 410A, what our product engineers had to do was they had to capacity match the compressors because R454B refrigerant delivers approximately 6% less capacity. They did this by using the scroll geometry of the compressor and then also optimizing the motor and the overload to match that new scroll geometry. The other difference is there are some materials in the compressor that were not compatible with the new refrigerant, so those materials had to be changed. That is really all the differences of the R454B compressors. It has the same type of shell, the same connection points, the same POE oil. They really look and feel the same as the R410A compressors. As far as the performance of the compressors, there are more similarities than differences. They have the same refrigerant glide as 410A, which was very insignificant. They also have a slightly higher discharge temperature in about 10 to 15 degrees range. However, that was also accounted for during the system design from our OEMs. So that is also very insignificant. With those differences, it's also important to be reminded that the A2L compressors are not a drop-in replacement for use in existing A1 systems. All the HVAC equipment must be designed and rated to use A2Ls, so they are not backwards compatible. That is really all the differences that I had today. Despite this being a major change to our industry, Copeland has been working diligently for several years on providing new products to the industry. our team and Copeland in general is well prepared to help you make this a smooth transition. We look forward to continue to work with NGH as we transition into this new A2L world. I'm happy to answer any questions that have come in today. Katie, back to you.
Thank you. That was a lot of great information. We really appreciate you sharing Copeland's journey with the switch to A2L. There are already a few questions, so we'll be answering those. If you haven't gotten a chance, you can ask a question by clicking the question button on the right of your screen. If you're in full screen mode, you'll need to hit escape to see it. All right, Brad, it looks like our first question is for you. You've been working at Copeland for a long time. How long have you been working with NGH?
So I've been in application engineering for 20 years. And so I started with Nordyne at the time, back in the early 2000s. So almost the whole 20 years I've been working with Nordyne in one form or fashion.
Okay.
Awesome.
I've heard about some ownership changes at Copeland. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. So we've been acquired by a private equity group, Blackstone. And so we've been doing the process of the separation from Emerson. And essentially, we've been operating as a standalone company for a few months now. So we're back to where we started as Copeland Corporation. Emerson bought us back in the early 80s, and now they just spun us off to a private equity group.
Okay. Can you explain what Glide is and what the Glide of R454B versus R410A?
Yeah, sure. So Glide is the difference between the starting and ending temperatures of a phase change. So basically, during the evaporation process or the condensing process, at a constant pressure, there's a temperature change with a blended refrigerant. So with 410A, it had very small glide, maybe a degree or less than a degree of glide, and being a 454B is also a blended refrigerant, and it has a little larger glide, but it's only about 2 or 3 degrees, I believe. So it's really kind of insignificant, I would say. There's really no special precautions really to be taken with that, but I guess I would defer to Nortec or the OEM if there's any kind of special circumstances needed for that glide. I don't believe there is. Talking to the refrigerant manufacturers, they say that with 454B, there's really not going to be any fractionation of the blend, and you can easily top off, after a leak, after a repair in the system, you can top off with a 454B just as you can with 410A.
Yeah, I'd fully agree with that, Brad. Yeah.
Good.
Thank you. Aaron, this one looks like it might be for you. Will filter dryers change?
Filter dryers.
Filter dryers,
Yes.
sorry.
No, quite right. So filter dryers, the actual part numbers won't be changing. There's not a special filter dryer for our 454B. However, there are some considerations. We've talked in the past about if you're doing the best practices today, you're already doing the best practices for 454B. And this might be one exception. Often people have felt like it's best to put a filter dryer on the inside of the system for serviceability reasons, maybe corrosion. However, keep in mind, we are trying to prevent leaks inside the structure. So, we may want to look again at it being more optimal to actually install that filter dryer outside. That prevents a couple of joints from being inside the home potentially. And our filter dryers have appropriate corrosion rating to be outside, so they certainly can. That may be a difference in practice from what people have done in the past.
Okay, cool. All right, Brad, looks like this one might be for you. What are the changes for the R32 compressors?
Yeah, there's some similar changes on the 32 compressors like the 454B. We've optimized the motor and the scroll sets for the refrigerant, and there's a few little material changes on a few components to deal with the refrigerant. And I would say the major change for our R32 compressor would be that it does have a different viscosity POE oil. So the 454B and R410A compressors have the same viscosity oil, the R32 compressors have a higher viscosity oil, and that's one of the major changes.
All right.
I guess let me throw a clarification in there. It's a great question. And of course, Copeland builds R32 compressors for the industry, but all of our products are going to be R454.
That's right.
Yep.
All right, Aaron, I think this one is for you. How is refrigerant reclaimed?
Yeah, so the actual process of recovering refrigerant from a system will be the same as far as how you mechanically do that, but there are some things to consider. You want to make sure that your recovery machine is appropriate for A2Ls, and that's something that the manufacturer of that device can tell you. You also need to, of course, put that into a tank designed for A2Ls. Those will be gray with a red stripe. And of course, we want to segregate refrigerants, so you'll want to use a different set of hoses to not cross-contaminate. And you'll find that A2L refrigerant tanks have left-handed threads, so you may need an adapter for that. And while we're on that topic, maybe a slight bit of a soapbox, but the reason that we're making this refrigerant change to begin with is because of the emissions of greenhouse gases. And if you think about our refrigerants that we use, they really they turn into emissions in a couple of ways. There are, of course, leaks from systems, but those aren't really that significant as far as the amount of refrigerant released into the atmosphere. And of course, there's a little bit that you lose when you disconnect, but again, not that significant. What really is significant as far as emissions go is refrigerant that is not reclaimed. And the EPA is able to track this because they look at three numbers. They know how much refrigerant is produced by the industry. They know how much refrigerant is used by the industry, meaning OEMs like ourselves putting it into equipment. And they know how much refrigerant is reclaimed from EPA licensed reclamation centers. And so by looking at those numbers, they can tell how much refrigerant's getting out into the atmosphere. So something to think about. Of course, we all know the right thing to do is to recover refrigerant, but it has a very direct effect on this refrigerant transition timing. Not this one. This one's done, but we're not at 0 GWP yet, right? And so there are desires to push that number even lower. And the timeline that will occur in is really a function of how good a job we do as an industry recovering refrigerant. So if we want that next refrigerant transition to go out as far as possible, we need to make sure that we're recovering that refrigerant all the time.
All right. And just a reminder, if you have any questions, go ahead and enter them, hit the question mark in the corner of your screen. We've got a lot of good questions coming in, so thanks to everybody. Brad, looks like this one is for you. Can the R454B compressors operate with R410A or vice versa?
So the short answer is no. And the reason being is the 454B compressors were, designed, engineered, qualified for R454B. We would not know what to expect running different refrigerants in it. The capacity, the electrical characteristics, the efficiency, there's no way to know that since they're not tested that way. And it's the same vice versa. You really shouldn't be putting 410A in a 454B compressor. I think I did mention earlier that there are some material compatibility changes in the compressor, so that would be a factor. So yeah, we do not recommend or we would not approve of any different refrigerants in the 410A or the 454B compressors.
All right, this may be a question for you, Aaron. Will R450, oh, sorry, I just refreshed. Will R454B systems be shipped with refrigerant on board? Yeah,
I've seen this question a few times. I think there might have been some rumors early on in this process that systems were going to ship without refrigerant, but that's not the case. We're going to ship all of our equipment with the factory charge, just like we do today, and so in that regard, will be no different than 410A equipment.
Okay. I guess that brings us, there's another question in here about shipping. Will R410A systems be shipped dry after January 2025?
Okay. So this question is probably coming from a scenario that occurred at the last refrigerant transition. So if you remember that, we were going from R22 to R410A, and there was a period of time there where OEMs were shipping R22 equipment, the old refrigerant, without the refrigerant in it, and it could still be used in the field. And that's not going to happen this time. There are some things in place that prevent that from really being an option. So you're not going to see dry 410A units after the start of the year like you did in the previous transition.
Okay. Thank you. All right, here's a good one for you, Brad. Are there any resources from Copeland to educate customers on A2L compressors?
Yes, absolutely. So I would recommend going to copeland.com and looking under the training and support area. And there will be application engineering bulletins on all our product families. So the R454B compressors would be start with a YA. So YA compressors, I would look for those. There's a lot of good information in those application engineering bulletins on how to apply the compressor, servicing, those kind of things. I would also recommend under training and support going to our safety resource center. So in the safety resource center, you can find things on A2L refrigerants and other topics. So with that, it's not just on the web. I mean, I would also recommend downloading the Copeland mobile app. So all that information is usually it can be found on the Copeland mobile app also. And I guess just another plug for the app. You know, for those that don't know or haven't used it, you can take that app and actually scan the serial code, the serial number or model number of any compressor out there in the field, and it will take you directly to a page, give you more information about that compressor with links to the application engineering bulletin.
Okay, that sounds like really good information to have on hand. All right, next one. Looks like this is for Aaron. Can mechanical fittings be used with A2L systems?
Yeah, great question. So the answer is yes. So ASHRAE 15.2 still allows for the use of mechanical joints in systems. The only requirement there is that joint, whatever it is, be approved to UL 207 and be installed per the manufacturer's recommendations. And as far as our equipment, we are going to have the same stub out and swedge dimensions that we do today, if that helps anybody in thinking about which kind of joints they want to use. We do still believe, and the industry believes, brazed joints are superior from a standpoint of leak performance, but it is allowable to use mechanical joints provided they meet those UL 207 requirements.
Okay, thank you. All right, Brad, are there any features of a Copeland compressor to protect it if it should protect it should liquid enter the suction port? Sorry, that was a mouthful.
Yeah, nope, I got it. Yeah, so there's some inherent design features of Copeland branded scrolls that helps with small amounts of debris or liquid going through the scrolls. Now, with that said, I mean, we would still recommend, minimizing the amount of liquid is always the right thing to do, always a good idea. The more liquid that is going through the compressor or the scrolls, there's always chance of oil dilution. You're washing the oil film off the components. And of course, if that continues, you'll get wear, and that just shortens the life of the compressor. So, the scrolls we've always prided ourselves on the compliance of the scroll set itself. So it's able to move radially and axially, so it kind of moves side to side. So it does allow for a short burst of liquid or something through it, but again, minimize it as best you can.
Okay, thank you. All right, this one may be for you, Aaron.
Mm-hmm.
Which products will have sensors?
Yeah, great question. So sensors are always going to go with the evaporator coil of the product, which means that any indoor cased coil or air handler will have a sensor, as well as any package unit that has more than 4 pounds of refrigerant in it in the evaporator part of the system. So that's the only case where you're going to have a leak sensor in the outdoor, and it's only in the outdoor in the sense that it's in the evaporator part of the system, but it's still physically located outdoors. Yeah.
Okay. All right, lots of good questions coming in. Keep them coming.
Yes, thank you.
All right. Will scrolls be featured? And can you elaborate on the benefits of a scroll versus a rotary? This is probably a little bit for both of you guys.
I'll let Brad go first there.
All right.
Yeah, sure. I can start with that. Scrolls, we still believe scrolls will be, the prominent choice in the HVAC industry, especially for residential AC air conditioners and heat pumps. They've had a long track record of being very efficient, durable, and reliable. So yeah, I mean, scrolls are still going to be featured throughout the industry. Let Nortech expand on that for their equipment.
Yeah, I don't know that I can add anything to that.
Okay.
Yep, exactly.
Well said, Brad.
Okay.
All right. Are there any differences in servicing the R454B compressors from a Copeland perspective?
We would always defer to the equipment manufacturer for servicing, of course. So Nortech, has that, but I will say that there's really not that many differences. I believe Aaron mentioned before about best practices. If you're doing best practices on 410A, and then that'll be carried over to the 454B requirements. So if you're always doing that, there's really not much you would have to do. It's mostly based on the the evacuation and the leak testing of being a requirement.
Yep. Yeah, you summed it up well, Brad. And just, again, I'll say this every time we do this, but very important going forward that you familiarize yourself with the manufacturer's instructions. We're going to have all the information in there you need to do a successful install or successful service.
Absolutely. All right, the biggest challenge your team faced in bringing the new compressors to market?
Oh boy, yeah. So we've been going through this process now for many, many years. Starting to design stuff back, I don't know, probably 5-10 years ago. The biggest challenge was really the amount of models that we had to touch. We're changing over all our product line essentially to the A2Ls, both 454B and R32. So just, we've sent out over 8,000 samples. So just the resources it took to get 8,000 samples shipped in the last few years to our OEM customers, and just the resources behind that was probably the biggest challenge. We had the design. We were confident in the compressor design and being able to produce them. It was just the sheer volume of compressors, not only fixed capacity, but we've had the two-stage, the other modulating, and the digital tandems, all the way up commercial sizes up to 40-ton, variable speed. So we have a very large product line of families, and just the sheer volume was the biggest challenge.
Sounds like quite a bit of work.
Mm-hmm.
I've been through
Yes, there was.
similar things, but not quite to that scale. All right, here's one. I think we may have touched on this previously, but can I reuse the R410A evaporator coil with an R454B outdoor system?
Yeah, so no, you cannot. So the flammability classification of a system cannot be changed in the field. So if you have an existing evaporator in 410A, no matter how much it looks like the new 454B one, you need a new coil that has the mitigation components and especially the sensor and leak detection device that is part of a 454B coil.
Okay. All right, so it looks like that may be all the time we have for today. I know we got a ton of additional questions that came in. So, so we're going to do our best to answer those in our A2L guidebook that we have published out there. But Brad, I wanted to thank you for your time today. Everybody on the other end of this video, thank you for your time and spending the afternoon with us to learn a little bit more about A2L. We invite you to join us for the Lunch and Learn series that we're going to have in the fall, and hope that we can help you continue through your A2L journey. And if you need anything in the meantime, you know where to find us.
Thanks, Katie.
All right. Thanks, Aaron.
Right, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Brad.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thank you.